So here we go then for qualifying for race 2, round 1 of the 2022 Global Series. And as you can see, we are in the fantastic Mugello, both virtually and in real life as well. As joining me here, Jack Gores commentating this one through. No Jack Appleyard this time, he's busy with other commitments, so just me to guide you this one through then. So Mugello is going to be a little bit of a challenge, let's be honest. It's one of the best tracks on the calendar, but also one of the trickiest. It's pretty fast and flowing, but as the eSport guys were saying to us a little bit earlier, as Jack Hammer pops it on the back wheel coming out of the pit lap, it's one of those ones that can catch you out. There's plenty of downhill, fast right-left combinations, certainly some few off-canvas thrown in there as well. So it's one of the places with the eSport gamers where their setup is certainly going to be the biggest factor in seeing them improve around this lap for the qualifying. Speaking of qualifying, this man here, Andrea Severi 11, formerly known as Andrew ZH, formerly on Ducati machinery as well. He was on pole here last season for, I believe it was also the second race of the first Global Series round. And this man wasn't too far behind him, third on the grid, I do believe, on the factory Honda as well. So you can guarantee that we're going to see those guys battling it out right at the front again. It'll be interesting to see what the benchmark is as we come into these first flying laps, these first runs. Just we had a free practice session before this, and it was actually Andrea Severi on that factory Suzuki who was the fastest by almost half a second. So it does seem that he's got that Suzuki singing around here in Mugello. One man they're certainly going to have to watch out for is Christian MM17. He seems to have got some of that speed back that he was perhaps missing last season in the Global Series back in 2021. Changed to LTR Honda, seems like the new colours have done him some good. And his man that has never lacked any speed, the three-time champ Trastevere. Well, if you think back to last season, he actually went on to win the race in Mugello, round 1, sorry. So certainly Trastevere is going to be one to watch as we do fly on to the first laps then. So Mugello is tricky. Well, let's talk you through it because we're coming into one of those sections now. We're about to come up to Casanova and Cervelli. Coming out of here, you'll see the riders probably use the ride height device coming down into here. Get it stopped because this one, he's gone a little bit wide as you can see there. So certainly already having some troubles as well. And as we said about Andrea Severi, vacating the factory Ducati seat, this is the man that's inherited it. So if he wants to make it 2 factory Ducati poles in a row in Mugello, well, it's going to be a different man to do it, and it is going to be this guy, the Piero Ricciuti, the wild child. We'll see what he can do. We know he's been incredibly quick in free practice, not just here, but also in Sachsenring in the wet. Oh, that was close. Mr. T looks like he's just had a tumble there through Arrabbiata 2. And it is going to be interesting because there's quite a few guys that are either returning or new to the series. This is another one that's returning, Davide Gallegna, returning on the Aprilia. Of course, in real life, you're going to be watching the Italian GP this weekend. I'm sure you'll be cheering for Aleix Spargo and Maverick Vinales on their Aprilias. With the recent news that they've both just been re-signed for 2 years, it's certainly all smiles and joy in the Aprilia camp at the moment. So Davide Gallegna will be hoping he can add to that as well in the virtual world. So we are about to get our first benchmarks across the board, and we do get that first benchmark in the way of Jack Hammer with Vindex then just pipping in by over a tenth. It looks like there's a 42 flat, as I can just see on the screen. Davide Gallegna comes flying across the line, and he goes up to 6th for now, just 8 tenths off. So, first run's on the board, and what did we say about that man, Andrea Severi? Last year's pole man, already up at the top then, a 41.8. That is pretty quick. I'm not too sure what he did in free practice earlier. I think it was a 41.5, so he's not too far off what he's done already. Of course, if you've got a copy of MotoGP 22 at home, I do challenge you to go and try and bash out a 141.8 around here in Mugello. It is pretty impossible. I think the best I could do was about a 45 flat. So these guys are a fair bit quicker than me, much handier on the old video game sticks. So a brief moment of calmness as we look as though it seems everyone's just on a chill lap. Quite often in these eSport qualifyings, you'll see the guys just have one fast lap at it, then maybe go change a couple of things in the setup. It's not too common that we see them go for 2 really quick laps back to back, although Christian MM17 does look as though he's doing that, but unfortunately his second split, it looks as though he's just invalidated it. Here's a man that isn't talked about enough, really, Dark Bright. It's been going well in free practice, kind of just there or thereabouts. It's been so close in qualifying. I won't spoil the qualifying result for the wet Saxon Ring session if you're going to watch that one a little bit later. But there was the top 10 all within 9/10 of a second. So, you know, it's pretty brutal in terms of if you're just missing that 10th or 2 that you need, you're really not going to be where you want to be. As you can see already here, half a second covering the top 5, and look at the names in those top 5 as well. Jack Hammer has been incredibly quick, not so much in the way of race wins or podiums for the young Brits, but his eSport career is still fairly young, but he's been incredibly quick this year. And I have to say, if there's a few guys away from the usual suspects that I'd be tipping to win a couple of races this year, he is going to be one of them. And I'm sure that many of you out there watching along will be cheering on this man, Tatigo, the Indonesian. I'm sure that his fan base is probably much larger than most. He's certainly going to be looking to do it. As I say, won't spoil the result of the first qualifying session for you, but it was definitely a good session for Tatigo to learn the level that is here in eSport, because it is so incredibly high that, as I say, if you're missing those few tenths, it's going to be a struggle for you. But this one, as he comes around to complete his first flying lap, or head onto his first flying lap, I would say, we'll see what the young Indonesian can do. Incredibly fast down there into San Donato, over 350 kilometers an hour. One of our colleagues here at MotoGP, Simon Crafar, actually got to ride one of the factory Aprilias earlier today. We were recording this on the Thursday of the Italian GP. He actually got to ride an Aprilia around the circuit for a couple of laps, and he said it was incredible how much the wings help going over that hump into turn 1. So you can imagine what it's like in real life as they fly into their 350 plus kilometers an hour. But of course in eSport, they don't actually do that, although it is still quite incredible to watch. Here's one thing that also you need to keep an eye on this year. You see down at the bottom right, there's all the info there with gear, tyre health and all this sort of stuff. There was also another one, if you quickly skip back a bit if you're watching this on YouTube later, you'll be able to see that there was a button there to click Z, or it might be something mapped onto their controller, as the game is all run their certain different setups. But that's for the ride height device. The ride height device is a feature in the MotoGP video game for the first time here in MotoGP 22, and it does allow you just to drop that rear end, stop the wheelies and get some really nice traction out the corner, and then also when they come to the next corner, brake really, really hard and keep it controlled. And some of the eSport guys have said that it's really helped them get to the lap times that they need. So I think you'll see them using it in a few places that you necessarily wouldn't see it in real life. Now here's Tatigo, as we did say, flying onto his first valid lap, and it's coming through 3 PB sectors obviously. See what he can do. It's pretty tight at the moment, top 10 just 1.1 covering them all. And he does slot into 11th, so just 4 tenths off Mr. T, the next marker. But 1.5 around Mugello, that's really not a lot, because it is quite a long lap round here, as we say, 1 minute 41.8, and a very technical one as well. Piero Ricciuti then, on that factory Ducati. Is that, oh, it's Trast in front of him. 3-time champ just moves out of the way as we drop down now. This is another tricky one. Very, very tricky little corner, that one is. Scarperia as they drop downhill. It's much like Casanova earlier on in the lap, but actually just a little bit sharper. And then as they round the lap, of course, you come through Correntino, long, long right-hander. And the flick through Biondetti 1 and 2, all under control right now for Piero Ricciuti. Christian MM17's had a crash on his lap. We'll see what the factory Ducati man can do as we come flying onto the home straight. Does look as though he's up, so let's see what this is going to be. This is going to be incredibly close. Oh, and he just misses out by 24 thousandths. So there's your front row at the moment, your provisional front row covered by less than a quarter of a tenth of a second. That's pretty incredible. And although it's only, what is that, just over 3 tenths back to Vindex, that's still quite a gap in eSport. So it seems as though these top 3 at the minute setting the benchmark quite high. It does look as though the others are just going to have to find a little bit of pace. Now, we've just crossed the mark for 5 minutes left in this qualifying. You'll notice that Adrian 26, the 2020 World Champ, does not have a valid lap yet. That would be an absolute disaster if he cannot get a valid lap in. It would be a complete disaster if you couldn't get a valid lap in, because it is so hard to pass in this global series that it's just a bit of a nightmare if you want to make your way up the field. So on board then with Darkbright, we drop down through Casanova and Tavelli. Next up is going to be Arrabbiata 1 and 2, two of the most beautiful corners that we have in MotoGP. Cambered, third gear, flicking all the way up. He might just touch fourth. No, he doesn't in the end. Rolls it through in third. Now this is the part where Reinhardt device does come into use, although he doesn't actually use it there. Banging it down the gearbox into first, getting it stopped with the Scarperia. Flick left going back up the hill now, and then this is Correntallo. Patience is the key around Correntallo. You've got to wait. He's back down into second. Will he drop it to first just to get the extra turning? No, he doesn't. Happy enough for second. So look at this then. All the way around. Keeps it tight on the exit because you've got to use up all the track you can for the flick in left, then right up to fourth through Biondetti 2. Now the final run down towards the final corner. Buccini into its second gear, run it wide through the middle, and then cut it back to the final apex. And where is this one going to take the Darkbright? Unfortunately, doesn't like it's improving at the minute, and that is why, because he's coming diving back into the pits. Whoa, that was fast on. He might have got a penalty for that in real life. So then, 3 minutes to go. This is a bit of a lull that we find in these MotoGP eSport qualifying sessions. Only Jackhammer on a lap by the looks of it at the moment. Oh, actually, Adrian is as well, but his has been invalidated through that third split. So this is the lull that we're talking about. Final little tweaks and adjustments. They'll go into the pits, put a fresh set of softs into it, fresh Michelin softs, and see what they can do. You might actually find as well that sometimes the eSport gamers, they'll stick a soft in the rear, but maybe they just need a little bit of more support with the front median. That's one of the things that the game developers this year for MotoGP 22 said they worked a lot on to really make the difference between those tyre compounds, and you can actually feel it in-game. And I'm sure that these boys, being a lot more skilled than me on the MotoGP 22 video game, can actually feel that. Christian's gone wide out into the gravel on this. But as we say, he will head back to the pits and get ready for a final assault with 2.5 minutes to go. So Vindex, unfortunately, two grey splits through the first two splits for him. This is a much better qualifying performance so far for Vindex on the RNF Yamaha. Incredibly quick rider. Last 2 years, he's been in the Rising Series finals, Rising Stars finals, beg your pardon, and he's actually won it 2 years in a row as well. So he's no slouch, that is for sure. And he's kind of been the protege, shall we say, to Trastevere at Factory Yamaha, because he has been the reserve rider for Factory Yamaha as well for the past 2 seasons. Now here we go. We are starting to see some orange sectors coming up on the board, which means an improving sector. So we're up on board then with Davide Galina on the Factory Aprilia. Nice late downshift in through Correntallo now. Keeping it tight on the exit. Let's see what he can do on the Aprilia. 9 tenths off at the moment. He's got to find just under 3 tenths, just over 3 tenths, sorry, if he wants to pip Darkbright on the Tech 3 KTM. Mr. T's also on an improving lap, but unfortunately his has gone away as well. Christian MM17 then building up for one final lap. He's got a minute to get across the line here. It could be quite close actually for Christian. So Davide Galina in the end then does pop up to 4th. Cracking lap that. Fantastic lap on the Factory Aprilia. 2.5 just under tenths off those top guys. So yeah, he's the first one to really bridge that 3/10 gap that we said about. So here we go then, Mr. Christian MM17 building up for his final lap then. He is going to make it across the line. Plenty of time to get across the line. Looks like Piero Ricciuti is also on the improving lap here as well for the first split. So let's see what he can do. And now they're all starting to go. Trastevere as well, lighting up the timing screens. And that is a cracking effort from Christian MM17 up into 4th. 2-2-2, Tony Cairoli gap to the front. Making his debut actually in Pro Motocross this weekend. So here we go then, we're on board with Trastevere now. Well, never not anymore, but still. We're following him through. What is he? He's 0.018 off at the moment, so that is a pretty fine margin to find. And you might think it'd be easy, but Certainly not. Not with the time that Andrea Severi has set on that factory Suzuki out front of 1:41.8. Coming down now, of course. Oh, he's gone a little bit wide onto the green, is that? Yes, that lap has gone. So that will be it then for Trasteveri's challenge at the front. There is only one man who looks as though he could spoil the party for those front 2 rows. And it is this man that we rightly cut to right now. Sitting 7th at the moment, Jack Hammer powers out the final corner on the Red Bull Factory KTM. We know it's quick in a straight line, but of course, balanced performance here in eSports, it doesn't really matter. Where does he go? He hops up into 6th, nicks 1 position off Vindex on the RNF Yamaha. So Vindex in the dying moments kicked off that 2nd row of the grid. And that was Adrian coming across the line. Where did he end up? Wait for the race director to load in any sort of penalties or shenanigans that need to be going on, as we can see at the bottom of the screen, improving the results. Who will it be? Did Adrian pip the lot of them? No, he did not. So Adrian's down in 9th, the 2020 World Champion. That is going to be a difficult one. But Andrea Severi makes it 2 pole positions in a row at Mugello, 1 on the factory Ducati, and now on the factory Suzuki, heading it up from Trastevere, the 3-time champ, with Piero Ricciuti in 3rd, the wild child on the factory Duke, following them up. Christian MM17 on the LCR Honda lines up 4th with Davide Gallinia and Jack Hammer. Strong performances from both of those. Not too far off. It just shows you how close it is. Less than 3 tenths off, and he is in 6th for Jack Hammer. 7th Vindex, 8th Dark Brighton, 3 KTM. Adrian, the big story there, down in 9th with Spadalongo. Missed the T1.1 off, and Tatigo, the Indonesian, on the VR46. Ducati down in 12th.